Hello, this is Dread, and in today's video topic, this is going to be the Zero to Hero episode on the Abyssal Echoes, Abyssal Decay, Vengeance, Void Knight. So, I'm going to start this video a little bit differently, real quick. There was an emergency. A few days ago, I was streaming Last Epoch to try to fill the content void that's been left while waiting for news for Last Epoch over the past month, and my computer crashed. It hard crashed. We were trying to find ways of improving performance for Last Epoch live on stream, and it completely bricked my computer. I can still use it. I can still use it to do things, but trying to play Last Epoch while also recording, editing, and stuff like that is an absolute pain in the ass, as I had to record this part of the audio, I think twice now, before my computer would actually let me do so. I am not necessarily in the best situation right now, but I'm going to try to make this as brief as possible. Essentially, I am buying a new computer. Now, I am an adult. I can afford my own things. That's not a problem. But a lot of friends of mine and people who watch me were like, hey, how can I help you with a new computer? Because they've been long watchers of the channel. They want to help. So I decided to make a GoFundMe for this specific problem. If you want to go down below in the description, there's the link. It's like whatever. Like, I don't really need it, but if you want to, go right ahead. If you've been enjoying the content over the past few years and you want to see more of it and more high quality and stuff like that and support the content on the channel, go right ahead. Now, thank you for your time. Now, before we continue, what are the goals of this character? We're trying to reach around 700-ish corruption and kill Abberoth within 2 days of playtime. I would say that's about currently like 99% of the content for Last Epoch currently, if you ignore a few other things specifically, right? So we're trying to get through most of the content of the game in a very quick time frame in solo character found. Now, my playtime varies from yours, but I try to speed through as fast as possible. Now, like I said, times may vary. You may do it a little bit slower. Now, what is solo character found? It is a self-imposed flag you can use when creating a character that disassociates it from all of your other characters' progression, items, and inventories. This allows us to test the build in a fresh environment. So for the build concept, we're going to be going around with a spell called Abyssal Echoes. We cast it, puts on a cooldown, and it applies a void dot to an enemy. And we can simply hit that enemy with anything else. It can be a basic attack, a spell hit, a throwing attack, anything like that. We can simply hit the enemy and it will pop Abyssal Echoes. Now, this will cause it to deal its damage instantly. So if you have like a 4-second duration on it, it will have it deal all 4 seconds of that damage over time instantly. Now, this is a very interesting way of playing damage over time. It's very fun. You know, you can play a quote-unquote hit build as a damage over time build, and it allows you to really just pump up those numbers. Unfortunately, due to EHG's rampant philosophy of making almost everything in the game have like quintuple the amount of HP as they used to, this has put a lot of stuff kind of on the back burner in terms of balance, in terms of all the new flashy stuff, right? And Abyssal Echoes is one of these skills. I thought it was pretty much dead in the water for the most part. I thought that it wouldn't be able to do enough damage because Abyssal Echoes, spoiler, is one of my favorite skills, and it's been kind of in a sad state for a long time. But thankfully, with a little bit of new tech and some elbow grease, we have managed to make it function again and live again. Now, how does it all work out? We apply Abyssal Echoes down on the ground. We utilize nodes like Screaming Rift, which constantly cast Abyssal Echoes again and again and again. The reason why we care about this is because Abyssal Echoes, the way it works is you only can have 1 stack of Abyssal Decay on an enemy at a time. So you can apply a stack and then remove a stack, and then apply a stack and then remove a stack, and then apply a stack and remove a stack. You cannot have more than 1 stack on an enemy at a time. This makes it so that you are incentivized to apply a stack, remove it, apply, remove, apply, remove at a faster frequency. And the faster you can do this frequency, the faster you can do damage, and the more damage you can do, because we don't really care about the duration of the, decay. We're trying to trigger it instantly. And that's why Abyssal Rift is so strong for us with Screaming Rifts, is it allows us to have multiple Abyssal Echoes going off and reapplying the debuff, and then we can hit it constantly with sources like Vengeance and Devouring Orb. Now, something that came up that made this function a lot better is the realization that Resounding Abyss actually works for all of this damage. I don't know why I didn't think of this until now. I guess I didn't really need it until now, but we really need the damage currently because we do not have that much single target, right? Echoed casts deal more damage and it's multiple other modifiers. This will apply to the Abyssal Decay, and it's like 150% more damage. And it turns out this is enough to start bringing our DPS in line with what is called quote unquote viable, right? We can get a lot of echo chance thanks to extra additional echo chance put in the tree this patch for Abyssal Echoes. So you can get, I think, like 50% echo chance or something like that. So this is just like 75% more damage in theory. I'm not entirely sure how it ends up being in the end. It's a lot of like number crunching and stuff like that. And the last thing that has made this actually function as a build is the new node Abyssal Rush. While you are moving, you will automatically cast a Devouring Orb if it's not on cooldown and you have enough mana. One of the more annoying things with this setup is constantly casting Devouring Orbs, and it turns out when you don't have to constantly cast those Devouring Orbs, it's not that big of a deal, because Devouring Orbs can give you a bunch of extra hits, which can, apply your Abyssal Decay, and that helps out a lot for clear specifically. And then we can use stuff like Vengeance as well on top of that on a single target to try to apply, remove Abyssal Decay as much as possible. The only problem that I've noticed with this build is it seems like as though our damage is capped slightly in terms of tick rate. It seems as though the amount of times it can apply and remove Abyssal Decay is capped by like some kind of like tick rate of the servers. And unfortunately, doesn't seem to be any way of like figuring that out currently, trying to figure out like the numbers and stuff like that. So right now we're kind of just blindly attacking and trying to just pop it as much as possible. It's like not that big of a deal, but it is an unfortunate fact about the skill currently in its current state. Now, let's talk about mandatory items. Guess what? There is no mandatory items. Now, there are items that you should probably have before you start pushing the character and corruption and stuff like that. But this works the moment that you can get the skills equipped, pretty much for the most part, or at least when you get Screaming Rifts applied and you can get like Vengeance and Devouring Orb set up. That's about when you can get it set up. It works from there all the way through, and it feels buttery smooth. That is one thing I talk about Abyssal Echoes, is it is a very buttery smooth playstyle. A lot of people, they'll be like, look at these 50,000 things I have to do just to be able to do this one boss, right? And then they go and do a monolith and it looks to be the most cringeworthy experience of all time. And I don't really play that way. I actually enjoy playing the game. I spend a lot of my time in the monolith of fate. So I usually try to incentivize myself to make my monolith clearing experience a lot better. And Abyssal Echoes does that. That's the thing that Abyssal Echoes is really good at, is having a very nice and relaxing monolith grind, because there's a few different things that causes it to do so, which we'll talk about later. But part of this as well is the items required. There is none required. Eventually, you want to get an Abberoth command, because it's just a really efficient item. Eventually, you want to get a Weaver's Gift, because it's a really efficient item. Eventually, you want to get levels to Abyssal Echoes and spell void damage flat. Eventually, you want to get the really strong idols for the build. Like, you want to get all these things, but you don't have to have them, which is like really nice on a solo character found fresh start, right? It's very nice to be able to not have to have a specific item you need. Now, let's talk about the skills that we utilize for this build. Now, one thing to note, I currently do not have a movement skill on my bar. Recently, builds without movement skills have been having a lot more of a renaissance, per se, mainly because of the addition of Evade. When you have Evade, it turns out you don't necessarily need a movement skill. And all of the movement skills for Sentinel suck anyways, for the most part. Like, the only one that's even remotely usable to a certain extent is like maybe, I don't know, like Healing Hands. And because of this, Evade just ends up being a better movement skill than everything that Sentinel has to offer. So we just end up just using that instead, and it's just really comfy. Now, because of this, we do build more movement speed than normal, but like most characters these days be pushing like 100% extra movement speed in the end game to feel comfortable, right? So yeah, like you're just doing that anyways, and that allows us to grab even more damage. But if you want to, in the complete end game, when you feel like as though you have enough damage, you can take out Symbols of Hope and try to go for like a movement skill instead, like Healing Hands. You could also go for Symbols of Hope with block instead, and you might have to dump something else because of that. But overall, I wouldn't suggest doing that. That's just something you could do. Now, for Abyssal Echoes, nodes that we actually care about, the biggest one, in my opinion, is Spreading Chaos. Spreading Chaos allows your Abyssal Decay to spread to nearby enemies after 1 second. This means that we can spread our curse to enemies and try to kill as many as possible, because if we put our dot on enemies and then pop it, they die, right? For the most part, for most trash. And the more enemies we can apply that to, the better, because Abyssal Echoes isn't that big, but you just put the Abyssal Echoes down, right? It goes on cooldown, and then it constantly flashes there thanks to Screaming Rifts. And then all of the Abyssal Decays that are being applied to those enemies, they can also spread to nearby enemies. And then Devouring Orb, with a lot of the setup, as you'll see later, can hit them from range, and that ends up being really good for clear, because all we have to do is just tap them on the shoulder and they'll die, which is fun. Overwhelming Doom increases the spreading distance, it increases the numbers spread too. Both of those combined leads to it being very comfy while clearing monoliths, which is like what I care about personally. And of course, Resounding Abyss for the more damage. There's also a lot of other more damage modifiers inside Abyssal Echoes tree. There's like Abyssal Echo duration, stuff like that. And you definitely want Shrieking Echoes as well. So you get 5 casts of Abyssal Echoes each time you cast it. And that's just apply, reapply, apply, reapply, and it feels great. Now, Vengeance is actually one of the breakthroughs of this character, mainly because thanks to the fact that we can cast Devouring Orb automatically, we can use a different skill. That means we can utilize Vengeance. Vengeance gives us a lot of benefits. Not only can we, hit the enemy pretty fast with a fast attacking skill to proc our Abyssal Decay, we can also get a lot of less damage taken, like up to 40% less damage taken, which allows us to dual wield without too much penalty. It allows us to not have to run a shield, and it also gives us a generic more damage boost, and all of that combined just makes us feel much tankier, and I really enjoyed using Vengeance on this setup. Now for Devouring Orb, this was another huge revelation for the build, being able to automatically cast it with, of course, Abyssal Rush. This means that we can have orbiting Devouring Orbs everywhere, and we can have those cast extra Abyssal Orbs, which can reach out to enemies and hit the ones that are being spread to by Abyssal Decay. You can have them orbit, and those orbiting ones can hit on impact, right, when you run into them. So you can apply Abyssal Echoes, run into them, the Abyssal Orbs will like hit them, bam, proc the Abyssal Decay, and they'll die, which feels really good to play with. And then we have like stuff like Abyssal Juggernaut giving us Void Essences, so we get more Void damage. And of course, Void Adept for even more Void damage, because we want as much damage as humanly possible for this build. That's actually one of the main focuses for this character, is trying to get as much damage as possible, because the scaling isn't that good, unfortunately, currently. Now, for Sisters of Hope, it's literally just damage. That's all it is. Getting Symbols of Despair, converting it to Void, getting percent damage, empowering Symbols for even more percent damage, and then more flat damage with Decree of Flame. It also gives you flat damage as a base, and also as well grabbing all of the extra maximum symbols. Literally, we're just trying to get as much percent damage as humanly possible to fuel our endeavors. Now we have Anomaly. Anomaly is mainly there to give us a little bit of extra cooldown thanks to Swift Rest, because we do actually need some cooldown to make it so that we can cast more Abyssal Echoes, because we're actually going out of our way to not play with cooldown, non-cooldown Abyssal Echoes. This is because I want to be able to, you know, not consume my entire mana bar constantly. Now, you could in theory do that, but the problem is then you start running out of points, and I found that just going for resounding is way better for the more damage modifier, right? And because of this, we do have to build a little bit of cooldown recovery speed, but that's fine. Anomaly is actually really good with cooldown recovery speed thanks to Mark of Rot, which is a 50% more damage multiplier to our damage. Absolutely amazing. And then on top of that, also the cooldown, just all of that feels really good. It also gives us Void Shred, which is more Void Pen. Anomaly is just a really good skill currently in the state of Last Epoch for Void Knight. Now let's talk about offensive stats that we care about. One of the things that really made me go wowzers while playing this character was utilizing a Weaver's Gift. Weaver's Gift gives us a lot of damage over time leech, which means we can dump leech on the passive tree and get more damage. It also gives us penetration for damage over time, which is what we're doing. And we also can get like T7 Void Pen on it as well. I got very lucky with this Void penetration T7 Weaver's Gift, but eventually you can get like void damage percent or damage over time percent. You can even get adaptive damage because it's a sword. You can get a really disgusting Weaver's Gift if you try and try. Definitely a chase item for the build in the future. Definitely something you'd have to do. But thankfully, because of the way that we can print Weaver's items, it doesn't actually seem that crazy, be honest, with how many Weaver's Gifts I saw while playing the character. But getting as much penetration as possible is great for us, as it's a multiplier for our damage, because we can't multiply our damage with crit and crit multi like normal builds can, so we have to go with other routes of damage scaling. Speaking of, we have Abyssal Decay Duration is one of our strongest ways of applying getting extra damage. I did not have that much when playing this character. You definitely want to have more. It is essentially a more damage multiplier because the more we get, the longer Abyssal Decays are, which then they pop and then deal more damage. It's essentially like having more bleed duration if you pop them. It's great. It's amazing. You definitely want it. Then we want Vitality. Vitality gives us +2 flat void spell damage per point. I did not manage to get that much vitality with this character. I ended up with 20, and that's just simply because that's what happens when you play only 2 days. Sometimes you get gear cucked. It happens. Coral rings are really good for vitality. You can also go with like red rings eventually as well, like because you know like you get all attributes. And you want to get like vitality wherever you possibly fucking can, especially like on the chest, on the helmet, on the boots. Like I was not taking advantage of the vitality that I could have been, unfortunately, because just the state of my gear and I was trying to rush. And we can also get a lot of percent damage over time, thanks to idols, thanks to gearing, thanks to spell damage. Like there's so many different ways of getting a percent damage. And then the last thing that actually helps us out is cooldown recovery speed. That's because more Abyssal Echoes being cast, which means more overlap, which means more Abyssal Decays being applied, which means more damage per second. Like I said, the character that you see in the footage is truly the floor of the damage that we can actually do, as I have tested it in trade, and you can get significantly more damage if you simply just balance all of your buckets properly. Now we're going to go and talk about the character in game, but make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel, as not only is that the best way of supporting me, you can also be the best way to show me that you want more content like this. All right, character creation again. This time it's going to be Lemon Mafia. This is an inside joke with me and my wife. If you know, you know. We're going to be leveling as a normal Sentinel. I'm going to be leveling his hammer throw like I've done so many times in a row. If you want a detailed leveling experience where I take the character from level 1 all the way to around 40-ish utilizing hammer throw, I have made a video about that, and I'll be leaving a link to that down in the description if you want a more detailed leveling experience, as I will be skipping around, as I've literally talked about leveling as a Sentinel so many times before. But we're just going to utilize Vengeance till we get Hammer Throw, then use Hammer Throw all the way through the entire game. There goes our Respec's Orion. Make sure to grab the Ignite Chance on Hit personal weapon in the stash that's in the zone. It helps out a lot early on as Hammer Throw hits a lot, so you can apply a lot of ailments to do more damage. Here we are in Act 2. As you can see, we have movement skill, Healing Hands, we have movement skill Javelin, and we just simply utilize Hammer Throw to kill things. We are mainly focusing on running a two-handed axe with Bleed and Ignite on it, as we get a lot of benefits for wearing a two-handed axe early on, especially while leveling his Hammer Throw. Very smooth leveling experience. I can totally recommend it, as it is literally what I've leveled as every single time. There are better ways of leveling technically, but this is the way that I personally level, as I enjoy Hammer Throw, as I was a big Hammerden fan, even though not really playing Diablo much. I really enjoyed the idea of Hammerden. So yeah, that's how we're going to be leveling here. Now here's our first monolith after the respec. We got to level 40 with Hammer Throw, finished the campaign. As I told you, you can just go down in the description for the detailed leveling guide, get done with that specifically, and then respec into this character. We are utilizing Vengeance to hit and proc our Abyssal Echoes. We're using Devouring Orb to give even more extra clear. We're trying to go with a two-handed staff, as you can see, as that gives us a lot of flat damage early on. And pretty much it's just a very smooth and simple experience. You just simply apply Abyssal Echoes onto enemies, and then you apply Abyssal, and then you hit them to remove it, and then you keep going on. As you can see, the clear isn't the best right now, obviously, because we're only level 44, but just a comfy experience all around. All right, here is our A-bomb kill. Not the fastest A-bomb kill ever. I've been kind of having a competition with myself, trying to see which character of mine can do the fastest A-bomb kill, and this definitely wasn't the fastest. We do get Soldiers of Hope, which gives us a lot of extra flat damage, which is really good for us. But yeah, just, you know, not the fastest kill, but definitely one of the safer ones for sure. I did not record the second monolith, which is dumb of me, but here is our Rye kill. As you can see, we finally got our Anomaly, which gives us a lot of extra damage. Nice juicy ticks on Rye there. No atrophy, sadly, though, this time. Now, to make up for not having footage for our second monolith, here is some footage of the third monolith. Now, as you can see, the build is maturing. We really feel that not having a movement skill, though, a little bit, but we really need that extra damage support on single target for Anomaly. Now, in theory, you could take Anomaly off your bar at this point and utilize an unspecialized lunge, but I'd rather go and eat some 16-day-old pizza at this point, because lunge is a very bad skill right now. I really hate lunge, so I'd rather do that instead. So we're just simply going to roll around with Anomaly and Evade, as Evade does not make me want to eat expired pizza. Oh boy. Yeah, as you can see, we got a Moon Staff base. Moon Staff is like about when most casters, especially the damage over time casters, do really well in the game, as it's a huge bump up in terms of flat damage and the ability to actually put stuff on your gear, because unfortunately, because of the way that these things work, casters and stuff like that, they especially damage over time casters, they heavily rely upon percent damage early on, and if you get a little bit unlucky in terms of your roll, in terms of your items, right, you might end up with a little bit less percent damage over time that you'd want. And thankfully at this point you can easily get a Moon Staff with like some forging potential open and craft a T5 damage over time affix, and that's enough to carry you for the early game. Really, that's really all you should be doing early on with this kind of character, is trying to focus to get as much damage as soonly possible, mainly because you would just want to deal more damage. That is the problem with this character early on, is just dealing damage. You want to deal as much damage as possible because it makes up for the fact, the weakness of Abyssal Echoes, where it has a low base damage. When you do this, you get rewarded heavily because you're playing on a Sentinel, you're tanky enough, you need to do damage. That is the problem, right? And it ends up making you feel a lot better. Here's a possessed Aurelis there. Ugh, race alchemist. Ugh. Now here is our Lagan kill. Unfortunately, we're not killing him that fast. I skipped a little bit ahead to save you guys time, as you know, I don't want to make you guys watch a whole 3-minute video of me killing Lagan very slowly, right, as a unoptimized build day one, right? So, I did this instead, but we do end up killing him pretty easily. And in complete stark contrast to Lagan, we have an Emperor of Corpses that goes down pretty quickly. As you can see, we're starting to ramp up that damage. As you can see, we are currently dual wielding. This means that we now have a large amount of flat damage and percent damage, probably because we can utilize an offhand weapon to get a lot of percent damage over time, get some penetration, and then our main hand can be a scepter or a wand, get some of that attack speed to help Vengeance attack more. We got like all of the stuff starting to stack up, and Emperor of Corpses isn't a piece of shit who actually lets us hack at him for long period of times, unlike, Lagan, so he goes down much quicker. Here's our first level 90 monolith. As you can see, very smooth so far because that Abyssal Decay just feels really good. And we also have Time Rot on hit, which helps us clear these really early monos very quickly. But even with just the base Abyssal Decay, not even taking into account the amount of damage you'd get by hitting enemies, is enough to kill trash very early on, which is nice, very convenient. This extra clear that you have with Abyssal Echoes makes up for the fact that you don't have that much movement speed or movement skills this early on. Like I said, though, you can always swap out Anomaly if you want more movement, but personally, it wasn't that big of a deal. Also, as well, like, I'll be honest, you're not really playing this build to giga zoom. You're playing this build to just simply relax, sit back, and have a nice, comfortable time, right? Watch some Netflix or maybe listen to a documentary and just relax. At least that's what I do personally. Now here we go, trying to get some ascendances for our boots, because boots are very important for us, as movement speed's important to make us feel good, as the faster we're moving, the faster a character feels early on. As, to be honest, when you're early on, the biggest thing that will affect your feel for the game is as much movement speed as possible. We had Natera's Path, which is great, lots of flat HP, lots of movement speed. Trying to go through our runes of ascendance because we don't have any required items to put on per se. Weaver's Gift obviously is nice, but like, we just want as much movement speed as possible, and we end up hitting a Dragon Shoes. Here is a Spirits of Fire, the trio. They're not fun, as you have to like kind of force them to move. As you can see, I'm wearing a Terror's Blessing, which means I'm summoning those little minions, which means they can get hit by the boulder, which can hit me, which is very uncomfortable. As you can see, though, our damage is starting to ramp. It's kind of weird. We had kind of like a renaissance in terms of damage early on. We lose a little bit of damage later on, like when we get to like empowered monos and like a little bit farther in corruption, but we smoothly scale from here. Now here is our Herot. Thankfully, we managed to get lucky with a Weaver's Gift early on, allowing us to do a lot more damage than we should be doing at this point. As you can see, very thick ticks. I believe if you were to take that amount of damage on the boss, that would be around like maybe 300k ticks so far on a single target on the dummy in town. And see here, even more damage. He's stuck in animation, and bam, we have killed him. Very nice. Here is the first Harbinger fight. As always, they have less HP than their empowered brethren, meaning that they go down much quicker. As you can see, our leech is enough to keep us sustained on the boss fight, and we can pretty much just face fuck them all day. Unfortunately, the Harbinger of Fear likes to move around, which reduces the amount of single target that we can do to her, due to the fact that we need Abyssal Echoes to be around her to actually apply the Abyssal Decay. Unfortunately, this is that kind of build where if the boss moves around a bunch, you won't be doing as much damage, but thankfully we are tanky enough to just face tank stuff while we wait, which is nice. Quick reminder, at this point, you probably have the gear to actually go and kill T1 Jurla, so make sure to do that and unlock COF or MG at this point. Now here's our first empowered monolith. Just a reminder, get out of your chair a little bit, stretch a little bit. I've had to do so myself as my computer's crashed like twice now while trying to record this. So yeah, just get some relaxation going. I'm totally not going insane right now trying to record this on this fucking piece of shit computer right now. Totally not. But yeah, as you can see though, and from the footage, our clear feels buttery smooth, even in empowered monos. That is because we have properly scaled the character. usually I've noticed if you go out of your way to actually craft gear beforehand and actually, think about how your character stats function and how the character functions, you can end up with a very smooth transition between empowered monos and non-empowered monos, because that's actually a big problem of late over the past few days. Is if you're playing like a worse build, you're not playing like a very thoroughly tested build, or if you're not like actually, thinking about what you're putting on your gear and stuff like that, you will have a very rough transition from normal monoliths to empowered, usually in regards to tankiness, not in regards to damage. It depends though. I'm a damage whore, so I like to scale as much damage as possible, but I've seen a lot of people have problems with either, damage scaling or defense scaling, because you need a little bit extra defenses to face tank stuff at this point, especially if you're playing like some squishy falconer or something and you're not necessarily, that experienced. So you definitely do need to do a few gear checks. Thankfully, getting to empowered monos as fast as possible is very good for us, as it allows us to scale as much gear drop stuff as possible, because that's when we start dropping all the nice exalteds all everywhere, right, as we kill things, and it feels great. Now here's our second harbinger. We're going to be trying to simply kill him as much as possible here to get to 300 corruption, because we want to get access to an Abberoth's command. So we're simply going to go and farm this monolith all the way to 300 corruption. Not only does that help us out in terms of dropping keys, harbinger needles, and stuff like that, it also allows us to farm for an Abberoth's command, which we'll need eventually, right? Because Abberoth's command is a very strong item for our setup, because not only does it increase Abyssal Echoes area, which allows us to clear faster, it also gives us a very fat amount of percent damage, while also giving us a lot of void penetration on top of that. It is one of our best in slot items, and eventually you'd want one with like 2 LP with like attack speed, damage over time or something, or maybe even void pen if you're feeling spicy, or double damage prefix as well. So a lot of different ways you can go about it, but as you can see, we're already ticking for a decent amount on the harbinger, doing plenty of damage, which feels good because we put our character correctly together. And as you can see, we're just face tanking him as well. Feels really good to play a nice relaxing build at this point, where you can just face fuck him all day. Unfortunately, not that fast of kill times, but that's just because we just have no gear, because it's literally maybe a few hours into the character. People have really high expectations these days for characters in Last Epoch, including myself, and I don't know, it's kind of unhealthy sometimes. Definitely unhealthy. Here we're doing some woven echoes and stuff like that to get a few woven echo points, mainly just to try to get more Weaver's gifts, because I haven't gotten one with good stats yet. Eventually we'll be farming a really good one, as you'll see later on, but we're simply trying to unlock the imprint slot so that we can get more Weaver's gifts, which will give us a lot of damage. But in theory, if you're playing on a fresh start, you should definitely be filling out your, woven echoes as fast as possible. I simply don't go out of my way to finish it on these runs, because it's just inefficient time wise, because what's the point in like finishing your atlas 20 times in a row if you're just going to go restart like in 5 minutes, right? So I try to only grab what is necessary, and in my opinion what is necessary is getting the imprint so you can start dropping more Weaver's gifts. And there's also the Weaver's will nodes that drop more Weaver's will items, and you drop a lot of Weaver's gifts through that, so you definitely want to be getting your Weaver's tree with this setup. For sure. You can also try to farm for some boots with some LP on them to get some double movement speed boots, because that's when you'll actually start feeling speedy in the Monolith of Fate. Speaking of, here is our first Orbis kill. Orbis has been buffed this patch. He is no longer a squishy bitch. He actually can, throw hands now, which is really entertaining now, as I had been complaining about it for months, and they finally fixed it. Turns out he was bugged. He was doing way less damage and had way less HP than he should have, and now he's a proper threat to threaten your characters. Even more corruption pushed, another Orbis down. Beautiful. And then another Orbis as well, because we're trying to push as much corruption as quickly as possible here. Now we're doing another Orbis as well, As you can see, this one's a little bit chunkier than the rest as we actually have some modifiers on them. We're already at 200 corruption. Remember, in between these, I am also doing as many bosses as possible, and I'm trying to do as much monolith as possible. And I'm also improving my gear. As you can see, we're already at 2400 HP. We have some cooldown recovery speed on our character, and that will start making us feel a lot better. And oh, it feels so buttery smooth. Buttery smooth. Hey, look, I died, but I killed him anyways. That counts. That counts. Now we are on our quest to try to get really good boots again by utilizing Runes of Ascendance, as I don't really have anything else to use them on, as I am simply not needing any specific unique. It's really nice to play a build that doesn't require uniques on day one, as that means every single Rune of Ascendance can go towards boots. Speaking of, Blood of the Exile is a good start. Hey, look, another Blood of the Exile. Blood of the Exiles are really good because not only can they give you a lot of strength for, of course, armor, just a lot of attributes can give you percent damage, and while also that, they can also give you a lot of movement speed. They have some of the highest base movement speed for unique boots in the game, which allows you to just move way quicker than using normal items. Here's another Oribus. This time it is a Blood Oribus. Blood Oribus has slowly crept up the rankings of the scariest Oribuses, as those Blood Orbs fucking hurt now due to the bug fix. Another Oribus. Another Oribus as well here. Beautiful. Another Harbinger. This time it's at 300 corruption. This is about where I'm trying to force an Abberoth's command drop to try to get more damage, because more damage is best damage, right? Also as well, the more Harbingers we kill, the more needles we get, the more Glyphs of Envy we get, which means the more pushing of corruption that we can do when we finally do our final push. And Glyphs of Envy, if you drop a lot of them, they can also allow you to kind of skip some progression, meaning that the 9 Harbingers I have to go kill, every single one of those can be represented as 4 Glyphs of Envy on average, which, makes things go a lot smoother. Boop on the snoot, Mr. Harbinger. Now here's some 300 corruption gameplay to give you an idea of what my clear feels like. As you can see, we have a lot of movement speed now, thanks to Blood of the Exiles and all of the nodes at the top of the tree, and of course the tree ring. And as you can see, the damage is fine. We're doing completely fine damage-wise. We're kind of zooming at this point. We feel pretty nice and comfy. We just simply put an Abyssal Echoes in the middle of a pack, and then we just watch everything explode, and it feels great. And then we just smack stuff with vengeance if they don't die from the initial explosion, as that gives us a lot of extra damage and a lot of extra defenses, which is important at this point, as this is when things start to actually hurt in the game. This is when things start to grow hands and slap you like a little bitch like you are. It feels really good to actually have defenses at this point. Unfortunately, we are dual wielding, so we are a little bit squishier than normal, but having that Vengeance DR makes up for that. As you can see, just simply putting down Abyssal Echoes is just enough to clear a lot of trash, and this remains the case all the way through. As you can see, our Weaver's Will stuff is proccing, getting a lot of just extra Weaver's Gifts, which can allow us to try to roll them, to try to go for a better one, as eventually getting one with percent damage over time, flat damage, or double percent damage over time, and void penetration can end up being very good for us in the end, as it's just so much damage, right? So much damage. You can see literally deleting that champion there. Our damage is pretty good, but unfortunately it is time to suffer, as we must finish our journey and push corruption, as every other character we've done has to. Here is Harbinger of Treason. Thankfully, we can kill the worm in a decent amount of time, which makes this way easier. As you can see, we can just simply sit on top of the Harbinger and let them hit us while we, Abyssal Decay them to death. It's kind of weird. You would think that they'd be immune to void damage, considering they are void creatures, but whatever. I guess our void damage trumps their void damage. Fight fire with fire at this point, I guess, right? Here's the Harbinger of War. I've noticed as I've gotten better at setting up characters, and I've gotten better at just simply doing this run in general, the Harbingers have lost a lot of their luster in terms of their difficulty. I've gotten to the point where I know the amount of stats that I need and require to get to the point where I can face tank them. Waiting to fight them after you've pushed a mono to 300 corruption seems to be that nice sweet spot that you need to get to before you can start face tanking them, which is nice. And continuing on, the Harbinger rigmarole, we got the Harbinger of Pride, the easiest of the thin Harbingers, as they don't have anything scary in their repertoire for the most part. No big scary damage over time pools or anything like that, right? So that goes down as well, very smooth. Now, here is the anti-melee Harbinger. As you can see, we're playing in melee range, so we do have to try to avoid the big boulders. But whenever we get to actually sit on top of the boss, we get to actually do damage. Unfortunately, I am a bitch and I run away whenever he does very scary stuff, as I try to not make things last longer than they should, as I don't want to have to redo the fight because he accidentally crit me for the 50th time. Thankfully, he is blinded, so he couldn't crit me even if he wanted to. But, like, I don't know. I've been scorned so many times in a row that it just kind of feels commonplace at this point for me to get cucked for random reasons, as I've killed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Harbingers at this point. So I'm just so used to this one specifically cooking me in a way, because he can hit you with the necrotic explosion, the boulder, and the slam all at once and send your character back to the Shadow Realm, which is not fun. Here is the Harbinger of Hatred. Thankfully, his Void Pool RNG isn't as scary as it normally is, but we've gotten to the point with our character where we can kind of just sit there, and that's thanks to Vengeance. Normally, we wouldn't be able to have this much damage while also having this much survivability, but enter Vengeance, being able to use it while we're also doing damage, which feels really good, by the way. Here's the Harbinger of Chaos. I'm fighting them at 300 corruption. I kind of forgot to fight them early on because, I was focused on pushing corruption and all that. In theory, you should save this for like an early amount of corruption anyways, because she's not like the most fun Harbinger to fight, mainly just because of the arena. The arena does not make it very nice. And, Lagan can also always like hit you with the beam, which doesn't feel good. So like overall, you should usually try to fight her at a lower corruption. Now here's our 9th Harbinger, Harbinger of Tyranny. I just sped it up because, same old, same shit. Just hitting them with the stick, hitting them with the Weaver's gift stick. And here's the last Harbinger. As you can see, our damage is actually starting to get up there where we can finally start doing actual numbers. Unfortunately, Dread is dreading this point because this means that it's time to push and push and push and push and push till the character can no longer stand on its 2 legs. As I've only been probably playing this character for at most a day, at most, right? So it's time to push with some squishy ass gear, baby. Now here is our Abberoth kill in full. I'm simply just going to shut up and put some music to the gameplay. Have fun. Now it comes time with every single character where I use Glyphs of Envy and Harbinger Needles to do about like 20 Harbingers in a row at 300 corruption, as it's very quick, to generate a very large amount of Gaze of Orbis, so we can simply do mono, kill Orbis, do mono, kill Orbis, do mono, kill Orbis, and after around 7-ish Orbises and 20 Harbingers, we can get around to 700 corruption within a few hours of gameplay without too much effort on our end from a fresh character within 2 days, which is very nice. And our damage is ramping a little bit. That is because our damage is very RNG reliant, because if you have 2 Abyssal Echoes off at once and they're off like resonance with each other, you end up applying much bigger ticks much quicker because, apply, remove, and all that. But the problem is, if you don't apply it and then remove it in a good enough frequency, then it's going to be inconsistent, kind of like playing like a cock build in Path of Exile, right? Which is an issue, but just imagine this fight, but around times by 20. I usually put on like an audiobook or something like that at this point, because oh my goodness, I'm going to die of boredom while killing 20 Harbingers in a row like this. One nice thing to get out of all of this is dropping a 1 LP Abberoth's command, meaning you can slap some damage over time percentage on it, which means we can actually do significantly more damage than we were doing before, because Abberoth's command is actually a pretty decent item, turns out. Very nice for us. All right, this is it. This is the start of the Orbis Gauntlet. This is 1 of 7, if I'm not mistaken. So here is Orbis number 1. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know why we're doing no damage. There you go. For some reason, we weren't applying Abyssal Echoes there. For some reason, like the Abyssal Decay. You can see it in the top of the screen where all the modifiers are. You can see the Abyssal Decay popping in and out. The problem that I was talking about in the intro, where it's just not that consistent, it seems. It seems like as though if the game lags a little bit, it doesn't apply a stack, or maybe it's applying it and then getting immediately removed in that frame or in that tick. I don't know what's going on with it. All I know is it looks a little awkward sometimes. Dormormu, I've come to bargain again. Last time I made a video, Zero to Hero video, I talked about, hey, let me find something else to talk about during this time, during the Orbis Gauntlet. This time around, I'm going to talk about my experience in Chicago. Recently, my wife's family, they gifted me a ticket to the Ado concert in Chicago. Very nice of them. I wasn't able to really buy it and afford the trip myself, but they were nice enough to, help me out, as, making Last Epoch content on YouTube definitely isn't the most, luxurious experience ever, but they were nice enough to let me go and have the experience. And I really like Ado. The reason why I like her is because I've listened to her for years now at this point. I pretty much started listening to her the start of my YouTube journey around like 4 years ago, and seeing her grow as a person who makes really good music while also seeing myself grow is just kind of feels really nice, And due to listening to her for a very long time, if you don't know, she's a Japanese singer, meaning that I've learned a lot of Japanese just by, listening to her, which has been great. And going to the concert was a very nice experience. I was not really able to do much as a child, per se. Like, I wasn't able to do the more fun stuff that other children around me would be able to do, right? The more, richer children, stuff like that. So I never went to a concert before. This was my first concert experience ever. And just thinking about, this artist that I've been listening to for years now, that's become my favorite music artist that I listen to all the time while I'm playing, because I'm playing a lot of Last Epoch in between all of these videos. Like, I don't know if you guys know, but like it takes a lot of time to play this many characters in solo character found, right? So I spent a lot of time listening to her music. And it was really weird to go to the concert and see so many other people enjoy her music as well. It was very eye-opening, and it was like the first time in a long time where I felt like I was in a community, like with some solidarity. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm like in the Last Epoch community, but I don't feel a part of it sometimes. I don't really like it sometimes. Like, it's a weird relationship I have with the last Epoch community currently, at least personally, in terms of content and such like that. But yeah, it just felt really nice to actually go and see the person I've been listening to for years and years and years on end actually live. It was a very eye-opening experience. Definitely worth it. Thank God. They were able to get me like really nice seats as well. We were like standing and dancing the whole time. It was really nice. I like I said, I'd never been to a concert before, so it was really nice. It was very nice for them to afford me the opportunity to, because like I said, because I spend a lot of time working on YouTube and stuff like that, I don't have as much money to spend on stuff like that. I'm usually spending it on bills and stuff like that because I'm not some kind of bum. I try to actually pay off my bills and stuff like that and pay off my debts and actually, contribute to society. I work like 2 jobs on the side of this. Like I try to make money on the side while also pursuing my dream, which is, making Last Epoch content. So, it was nice to just be able to do it. That was a very nice present last year. Very, very like fulfilling experience, right? Very fulfilling. Oh my god, you mean we still have 2 more of these? Oh my goodness, dude. I swear to God, when I'm like doing these Orbises, I like go into a trance. I like turn my brain off and I do them again and again and again and again. And I've done them so many times. And like, don't get me wrong, I enjoy it. It's fun. I take it on the chin and all that. But it really is getting to the point where I'm like going insane. Uh Although I will say, I have been noticing we started at 36 seconds kill time on the footage, at least we're starting recording, ending recording, and we're only at a minute 30. So doubling the amount of HP and damage he does, actually I think it's like tripling. I'm not entirely sure because he has his own base scaling based on corruption on top of the modifier, so he gets way scarier with corruption scaling. He also gets faster. I think he gets faster. I'm pretty sure he gets faster. So usually what ends up happening is Orbis gets like kind of exponential a little bit in terms of his scaling, where there comes a point where he does so much damage and he's so much faster and he has so much HP that your kill time of him ends up increasing significantly, especially if you're just playing a normal build. Like if you're just playing a fucking Falconer, you just like bam, dead, right? But if you're playing a normal build, like it definitely feels like he grows hands, man. And here it is, the final boss. And of course, it's a stupid fucking blood Orbis. I'm gonna freaking go crazy, dude, because like I hate Blood Orbis. I hate Blood Orbis. I hate Blood Orbis. Those blood orbs, due to the bug fix, do so much damage. Now remember, I'm playing a Sentinel. I have more access to armor than normal. I have access to Vengeance's debuff. I have the decent leech of being a void damage over time build. I have access to all these things that are really nice. And oh my goodness, even with all of that effort, those Fizz explosions for some reason do so much damage. And I'm pretty sure currently they're doing way more damage than intended, personally, and that's why I just completely loathe every single time I see a Blood Orbis. And for some reason, they have a really weird hitbox. Sometimes you try to like use like a skill that makes you invulnerable, like healing hands or something like that, and you rush through them and they don't pop all the time. Like it's just a weird experience. Sometimes they go invisible and they try to track you still even though they're invisible. They have really weird amounts of time that they stay up. Like those blood orbs, and he seems to have like a much lower cooldown for spamming them for some reason. I don't know. Blood orbs can go suck a cactus for all I care currently. And here we are, the 700 Corruption Harbinger. Unfortunately, this is not fast enough per se. We definitely need to grind our gear a little bit more to make it more comfortable. But of course, I'm playing on a very shoestring budget. if you, the viewer, were actually playing this character, you would have went out of your way to go finish your Weaver's Tree. You would have actually used all your prophecy favor. I usually don't use all of my favor when, playing like this, mainly just because I just find it's a waste of time, because it's like favor is really good for a long-term gain when you're trying to find like really good pieces of gear, but for the short term it's just not that effective. So it's just much better for me just to rush to the end and just deal with the fact that my character is doing slightly less damage than it could be. And I'll be honest, it actually ends up representing the character in a much better light, because that means that, me with the shittiest fucking gear possible means that you, the viewer, with much better gear can do much better than this, right? This is like the bare minimum after rushing all the way through. It feels pretty good knowing that like this is literally the least amount of gear that you probably need to make this character function, and it does most of the content in the game, which is nice. Definitely a good feeling, but definitely could pump that damage up for sure. Now, even with that all being said, even with that subpar, um, you know, Harbinger kill, we still clear really nice and comfortable, even with the less chunk that we have access to, as you can see. Even with all of that, like we just plop down an Abyssal Echo, we smack the rare a little bit around, and we do plenty of damage. So that's really the point of this build, is to simply get it to that point. And if you focus a little bit more on gear, get a little bit better gear than me, you can cruise through, get some movement speed, stuff like that. It'll just feel way better than what I'm currently doing currently, right? I only have a 1 LP scepter. I only have like a pretty much a 1 LP Weaver's Gift. I don't have good exalted gear. Like, you could do way better than I'm currently doing right now. So the fact that, we're at such a low amount of gear at this point and we're just so comfortable so far at 700 corruption is a very good sign for a build that could push much farther, which I'm really excited to play this next season, maybe and trade. We'll see. I definitely want to try something like this eventually and try to push it to its absolute limits, right? But yeah, that's going to be it for this as well. Now, with all that being said, this has been Dread, off to go do something else. Thanks for watching. Bye.